J-I-N-G-E-N.
John Grigger, you're not on mute.
Mute your mics, please.
Thank you.
How do I get on mute? Here we go.
All right, Albert, would you offer a prayer as we begin this
Yes,
session?
I'd love to. Yes,
Thank
happy
you.
St. Paul's Day, everybody, and it's good you're here. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
And you have to mute yourselves. I shouldn't be hearing that. Dear God, we thank you for your beloved servant, St. Paul, and for those of us who follow in his name, and we pray for your Holy Spirit as we discern and share our journey as the people of the way in this holy place. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Okay, I just wanted to set the context for today's session. When we last met in September, we had a town hall, and I presented a presentation based on a retreat by the Vestry, during which we set some goals for the transition period. Now, we don't know the length of the transition period. There are things out of our control, but we certainly we're looking at, say, 12 to 18 months, but then now sort of chunking it down into a more manageable piece. We thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of swing back and see sort of where we are, not on all of our goals, but certainly on some of the ones that are the most present right now. So I would like to keep this session to an hour if we can. You'll be hearing from a lot of people, and what they'll be providing is really more or less a sampling of what has been going on. You will hear much more in depth from Mark Duckett about property, because there are some, as you know, some very, very real and to some extent urgent issues there. And I think it's wise that we all have an opportunity to talk about that. So we will hear from our outreach committee. We'll hear a little bit about stewardship. Steve Camplandos will share a bit about some of the progress in governance and best practice of the church. And then Louise will update us on the search process. So I want to just refresh your memory of those goals. I'm not going to read them all, but you may remember this slide from the presentation back in September. All of these goals are, as my children used to say, intertwinkled. They are all connected to one another. They are all like our rose window in our church. They are all part of who we are and what we are trying to do. So to pull out any one and make it more important than the other, it would not serve us well. But like I said, we will be talking quite a bit about property today. This presentation will be posted. I'm going to update it after the meeting because I think there will maybe things to add to the slides, and it will be posted on our website. If you have not been on our website lately, I encourage you to go on there. It has been recently updated and refreshed, and there's a lot of information there. All right, so Mark, I think we need to do a screen share swap. I will stop the share here.
Okay.
And it's all you. So Mark Duckett, who's the chair of our property committee.
Very good. Good morning, everyone.
Mark, you're muted. You muted yourself.
I actually muted all. I want Mark to unmute. Mark, do you mind unmuting?
Okay, am I there?
You are.
Can you hear me now? Okay, very good. So thank you all this morning for being here. When I joined out here, we have more than 50 people on this call, which is great. So property update, we've been very, very busy over the last year together. So I just wanted to remind you who the angels on the property committee are. We have a great group: Jim Albert, Pam Bracey, Joe Cafera, John Fagati, John Grigger, Alex Jones, Barbie Kimberly, Mike Latini, George McNeely, Ned Smith, and our last John Zimmerman. So this is a group that's been together for quite some time and is really dedicated to to the church and making sure our property is the best it can possibly be. So interestingly, as I was putting this presentation together, I realized that it was at last year's St. Paul's celebration that we had another forum to talk about what we were doing with property, because we had just gotten some work done as far as design. And that was in January 26th of 2020. So it being 2020, the best laid plans, and we didn't see that coming. So this is a slide directly from that property committee update. And we had always talked about, even during the campaign fundraising portion of the capital project, about three areas: safety, outreach, and worship. And so safety was, looking at things like getting us onto the sewer, making sure the flush was in good shape, and looking at lighting the campus. Outreach included things like the parish hall and the kitchen so that we could serve the community. And then worship was with the sanctuary upgrades and that thing, and those items. So we had put together a series of priorities for the campus. This was what we were originally looking to accomplish: flush investigation, sewer connection, site lighting, parish hall renovation, and kitchen renovation. So for a number of reasons that I will get into after we go through these priorities, we have reordered some of these priorities. So now the priorities on the right-hand side or the left-hand side rather, that you see numbered are where we are working to focus our energies. And that include, the new ones include education wing roof, new electrical service, rewiring, fire alarm, security, exterior hardscape restorations, and sanctuary improvements. We've moved parish hall, kitchen renovations, and these items to the next phase of things as we work to get these done. So parish hall renovation, kitchen renovation, sanctuary air conditioning, audio visual, campus Wi-Fi and lower level classrooms, and rectory are some items that we are focusing on for a later date. And the property committee is working with both the finance committee and the Vestry to put together a 5-year plan for how we can get things done that we are not able to get done right now within the limits of the capital campaign funding. I would encourage you to go onto the website and under renovations, there are 2 tabs. One is renovation, building renovations, and one is organ renovations under the renovations tab. And you will see these priorities posted with cost estimates attached to them. So if you want to see the numbers that are associated with this, it is on the website. I didn't include it here because it's just clutters the slide, and the information is available for folks. Is there anything in the chat that I need to be aware of? I'm not able to see that at the time right now. Any questions? Okay, great, thanks. So what was the biggest thing we found as we started to look at all of this? Our electrical service is sort of one of a kind. We realized as we started getting into the design for air conditioning and kitchen upgrades that our service, PICO would not allow us to continue with the service level that we have. We are underserviced. So one of the things that will be done as part of the electrical upgrade is a complete new electrical service that will upgrade us to 1,000 amps. And one of the oddities that no one had a clue about is that our system is wired as a 2-phase system, which apparently is an electrical approach that sort of went out of favor well before World War II. And so we are not at all up to the current technology from about the last 70 years. So part of this will be to change everything over to 3-phase power. I did some research on 2-phase power, which I had never even heard of, and found that there are only 2 places in the country where it still exists. One is Boston, and the other is Philadelphia. So we are using this opportunity, frankly, to not only upgrade the service, but to modernize our service to current modern standards. Some of the things that have been, and this on the left is just a photograph of the service on this pole. So what will happen as part of this service is a new vault will be dug near the Alexander room, and the new transformer will reside in that vault, and then the service will go into the basement of the education wing at that point. I just included a couple of other photographs so you can see the level of wiring that has been patched together in this church. This is actually at the back of the church, next to the baptistry. And what has happened is that over the years, this started out as fuses, and as things were upgraded over the years, the last upgrade that was that we found was from about 1962. We have had a forensic investigation done of the entire electrical system. And what was done at the time was to replace all of the fuses with breakers, but within the original enclosures, and that's not up to code. So what we're doing now is getting pricing for replacing all of the breaker boxes and distribution panels throughout the campus, not including the rectory at this point, but through the main campus with up to code breaker boxes, and then we'll be putting a plan in place to replace all of the branch wiring, which fortunately is in conduit. So if there is a problem, it doesn't pose a fire hazard for us in the new conduits. Here you can see some of the real kind of frightening things that we're facing with frayed insulation and these copper lugs and some of the old work. And then even the newer work, which is on the right-hand side here. This is the control system for the lighting that was installed, I want to say in probably 2006, 2007, when the church was relit. We actually had a small fire in that area where you can see this has been blanked off. So we've got that corrected. We're looking at taking a much larger approach to try and fix the system from the very beginning all the way through. So that is some of the reasons that we have moved electrical way up the list. The other thing that was moved up the list was the education wing roof. So we've had some water infiltration problems there, and a couple of reasons for that. There's no overflow scupper. There's no access to the roof, no easy access to the roof, I should say. And we're also experiencing rainfall patterns that are far different than what the building was designed to accommodate. So we're adding steel to the roof for future air conditioning. We are putting an access hatch in. We're repairing the roof, and we're putting in a new roof scupper to allow for overflow before it breaches the flashing. Here are just some other conditions you can see in the parish. I wanted to point out, as I was going through this, I sort of flashed on the picture of Dorian Gray, that we're living in this beautiful sanctuary, and in the back of it, things are falling apart that folks don't see. And, you know, we need to really deal with these issues. So cleaning this out, adding fire protection, adding security systems, making sure that we are monitoring the property to allow us to respond to anything that might happen just because it's like this. And I think we also need to get into some better habits of not holding on to things that just sort of end up in the church and then stay there for whatever reason. You can see up here the parish, this is in the parish hall, just patches to the roof, windows that are in bad shape that need to be addressed, and we're doing that as part of this. So anything in the chat that I should respond to, Ruth, or Anybody yet? Okay. So is there any good news about this? Because we're all living in the bad news. So one of the best pieces of news that we had was about the flesh. There was serious concern that the flesh might be compromised. We had seen from a visual inspection and some drone footage that Mike Latini had arranged to have done for us, that there seemed to be some issues with the flesh. So we had contracted a group called Vertical Access, who you see here, to do a hands-on inspection of the flesh. And what they found, they climbed up into the flesh and got inside and did drone footage and GoPro camera footage of it. The flesh is in great shape, so we do not have to worry about that. That has, I believe, Clark Groom told me the last time anybody was up there in the flesh was probably in the 50s. So, you know, we now will be hopefully budgeting so that we can do an inspection of the flesh every 5 or 7 years or so to make sure we are addressing anything that could become a problem before it actually becomes a problem. Then the other piece that is good news is the organ restoration. So you can see here the organ has been taken out. If you haven't been to the church, it's gone. With Andy and Steve Russell and some trustee volunteers removed all of that. And because the organ is now out of the church, we are moving the sanctuary work up in the priorities because it's the time to get it done. Without the organ there, cleaning the stone, you can see some discoloration here. And cleaning the woodwork would just put dust everywhere, and that's not great for an instrument like that. So that will be happening, and I thought I would just end with a happy picture of people who having done the work on the organ, and Lorraine there with her crossed pipes. Any questions or any thoughts?
Yes, Mark, there's a question from the chat. Does all of the electricity need to be replaced? Or could things be left, like the outlets in the church itself for candle lights, could they be left alone?
Oh, no,
All or nothing?
No, it's not all or nothing. In fact, it will be phased, I think, because we'll replace all of the panel boards, and then, for instance, the outlets in the church or in the parish, those are anywhere in the parish, are really what's known as branch wiring, which goes off of the panel to that outlet. So that can be replaced in a phased way. It's all in conduit, so we can pull it, and it's not a safety hazard. It's also the piece that is the most unknown cost-wise, because there's a lot of tracing to be done with them. So we will not be with. It's not all or nothing. No. Anything else?
Yes, there's another one here. With repair of the parish hall and the kitchen being many months or years away, hopefully months, will the current parish hall and kitchen still be available for programs as they are now? In other words, while we're waiting for this work to be done and I guess pandemic restrictions lifted, will we be able to use the spaces?
Yes, there is one condition in the kitchen that needs to be repaired. And that has to do with the hood over the stove and oven, and that will have to be fixed. And once that's done, then the kitchen can be used again. And the thought is that maybe we can do some things in the parish hall. So we're still trying to get some of the parish hall brushed up if we can. But again, we are revisiting the priorities that you saw on the right-hand side of this. In a more global way. So the left-hand side is moving forward. Anything else before I turn it over to you, Ruth and Mr. Latini?
I don't see anything else there. Anyone else?
All right. Thank you all very much.
All right. All right, so having a little issue with advancing the screen here. Bear with me just for a moment. All right, so Mike Latini, could you just give us a little update on the space utilization efforts?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. So as you can see, as you know, we haven't really done much with space utilization, mostly because of COVID. Right before COVID, we kind of started up talking about how we can utilize the space more, specifically in renting out our unused spaces, especially when we're not using them. So we still are trying to decide which spaces are the best to be rented and how. Let me pull up my notes real quick. How, what are our open spaces, and having a list of the rentable spaces, the details, meaning the dimensions of them and everything, and then how much will their rental fee be? So my chat with you all really quickly was mostly to put out the word that we're looking for help from people in the real estate industry to help us put that out there. We feel pretty confident that once we as a group have picked the spaces that we want to rent out, that we want to have be available, that they will be able to be rented. But we have them listed nowhere. We don't have any pricing for any of them. So we want some help from anyone in the real estate industry so that we make sure we make the right decisions in listing them, whether we just put them on Facebook or whether we're putting them on LoopNet or something of the sort. So my chat with everyone here was just pretty much to put that word out there that we're looking for some help. We understand that renting space right now is very much up in the air because of COVID, but we do know that there are folks and groups out there that are looking for space, and we have it, and we'd like to make some money off the space that we have to help take care of all of these improvements and property needs that are going to be a continual expense forever. So the more help we can getting money in the coffers for that will be great. I think that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later.
I seem to have lost the chat. So if you do have a question, could you unmute and ask, please?
See the chat also.
Yes. So, Karen McShane, I'm wondering, with all of the ongoing renovations that we have and are planning, what is going to happen with rental spaces as we have to renovate those spaces? Are we going to be asking organizations to move to a different space in the building so that we can redo the space that they were in previously? Like, how is that going to work?
So a lot of the rental spaces that we're considering right now aren't on the list of remodeled places, meaning, while we do rent out the parish hall from time to time, it's usually on a weekend basis, not on a more consistent basis. But if you think of more the rooms in the crypt, where the area where the music school used to be, all of those classrooms down on that first level, and where the guidance counselor or where they used to be, those are all vacant. And while they might get some minor updates or enhancements, there's nothing on the list right now other than just making sure they're safe to be in.
Mike, is Ann Klinger no longer there?
No, she's not. I think she retired and I guess almost a year ago.
Okay, thank you.
No, you can't.
Hey, it's Judy Smith. I have a question. Is the music school gone?
Yeah, I can report on that, Judy. They have gone totally virtual. He's about a third of his students. Mickey and I are in conversation, and he's hoping maybe in the fall that they might be able to come back. So they're kind of struggling like a lot of businesses, but their hope is to come back at some point.
Thank you.
Anything else? Is there anything in the chat? I lost the chat when I shared my screen. I'm sorry. I don't want to ignore a question.
Oh, I'm watching it and there is not.
Thank you, Clark.
Yeah, there's nothing in the chat. That's
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. If folks are wanting to be part of this, who should they contact? You or Mark or me? All of the above?
Any of the above, all of the above. My
Okay,
email is myname@gmail.com.
great. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to give you an overview of outreach. Many of you are aware of some of the things that have been happening, but there have been a lot of changes, certainly with COVID, and we wanted to ask Tom and Charlotte to give us an update on outreach. So Tom O'Rourke, take it away. Hopefully you're here, Tom.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Oh,
There we
okay.
go.
I had to unmute.
Not a problem.
I'll start with just the three overarching statements, but then I'm gonna you can read the overview if you want. But I'm gonna cut this very short. We remain focused on the homeless and hungry in our area, as we have been focused for now almost 10 years. We are struggling in the pandemic to do one-on-one volunteering, but we're doing pretty well there. And we remain intent over the long haul to get generations X, Y, and Z more opportunities to serve the greater good. But 2020 was a good year. We gave $33,000 in grants to 12 organizations, thanks in good part to remembrances to Jake and Betsy Roke, Fred Voigt, and Newbie Strong, gifts that were given in their memory, which we were able to pass on to organizations that we support. We maintain pretty solid collaborations with our core relationships, primarily face-to-face, IHN, and the Whosoever Gospel Mission. Shop and Drop, we had great participation in Shop and Drop, and that continues. We've dropped off over $12,000 worth of staples at St. Luke's, thanks to the leadership of Charlotte, Linda Boggs, the Gagnes, and Wendy Munyon. Lisa and Mike Budd spearheaded a tremendous Thanksgiving dinner drive. We delivered 187 turkey meals, not just turkeys, but full meals to St. Luke's, Face-to-Face, and Southside Church. Tremendous. They took it up from Jake and Betsy Roke, and they're on that case. The Christmas Giving Tree was led by Kara and Karen. It was a very successful effort. And the two have raised their hands to lead it again next year. Winter coats keep coming. You guys are tremendous on winter coats, and they are used. They are assigned, used the minute they arrive at Face-to-Face. The Rollins family and outreach continue to support Valerie Stevens and the Wajuma Jake family. They're doing fine. The family's doing fine, and we're in place to keep a hand on their shoulder. Finally, Albert organized the Walk of the Holy Family, a multi-church Christmas-related involvement in support of IHN, and that raised $15,000 for our IHN. So in sum, we had a pretty darn good year, notwithstanding the pandemic. And with Cheyenne Mulder joining us now as co-chair, we look forward to 2021. she'll give us a good boost on the leadership side. So there's where we are. I'll take questions or however you want to do it, but there are a lot of people got involved and enthusiastically. So we're pleased with 2020.
Tom, what do you need from us?
$7,000 in the budget.
Okay. And from the parish as a whole?
You just keep doing what you're doing, and as the pandemic lifts and we get a little more flexibility, those who volunteer one-to-one, whether, you know, we volunteer specific skills in the health area, in the legal area that we've been unable to do this past year because you can't get one-to-one with people at face-to-face, for example. But we'll resurrect those opportunities as the pandemic lifts a little bit and we get vaccinated. But no, I think everyone. I'm amazed at the enthusiasm and the support that took place. The number of people who got involved in one way or another in 2020. So everything looks up.
Great. Any other questions for Tom? Regarding
there is a question on the chat. If you still don't have it, Ruth, it is, will there be a 2021 rummage sale?
No.
So all the more reason to find resources to be able to.
We have enough on hand from previous rummages to grant at about the $20,000 total level for 2021. But after that, if we don't find a replacement for Rummage or some other way to do Rummage, our granting program will be hurting big time.
Sometimes people wonder how they can become part of that kind of conversation. And, you know, are people welcome to kind of chime in with ideas? Maybe not right now, but I mean, going forward.
First of all, you can join the outreach committee. We welcome anyone who wants to join the outreach committee. And we hope through the addition of Cheyenne as co-chair that we're going to have a better contact with generations X, Y, and Z through parents exchange and that sort of thing. But we take on anybody who wants to get involved is welcome.
Great. Clark, were there any other questions in the chat?
Well, there's not a question, but there's a comment from Arabella. I hope your knee's better. Let's also recognize the $7,000 approximately that 5 Fridays raised and sent to Face and IHN.
Absolutely. And also the $5,000 that Albert, through his discretionary fund, contributed to the grants that were made. That's right. You're absolutely right.
Thank you, Arabella, for bringing that up. All right, good stuff happening. Having to veer around the pandemic. Any other questions for Tom? Great. All right, let's move it on. So George McNeely, talk to us.
I'm here.
Hello again.
So I just have a couple of points to make. So first, we're going to start with, I'll start with an update on 2020 pledging. So we've passed the end of 2020, thank goodness. But there are a few people who haven't actually completed their pledges from last year. So the office sent out a letter, which if the post office functions, will get to you. Mine arrived just a few days ago, which is a year-end summary, and it will note if you still owe anything. And so we hope that people will make an effort to fulfill their pledges as best they can in this complicated year. So just a little reminder on that one. And then jumping to 2021 pledging, just an update because we're still continuing to bring in more pledges, which is why I haven't put numbers on the screen there. But we are very close to our goal. So just a little history. Back in July, when the Stewardship Committee first met, we had to figure out what our goal would be for this year. And we were in the depths of the first, that early phase of trouble with the pandemic, and it was a little hard to know what was going to happen. But so we decided to have a rather modest increase from last year's goal, just because we were recognizing that it was a complicated year. And we also got ourselves organized particularly early this year. We added a few very knowledgeable and energetic members of the Stewardship Committee, which is great. And we brought on a fundraising, outside church fundraising consultant at quite modest cost, who I think is on the call, Rick Felton, because we felt that in this particularly challenging year, both because of the pandemic and because of the transition, that it was important that we have some outside guidance to help lead us on this. So that was great. And one of his recommendations was to expand the number of parishioners who made calls when we sent out the pledge letters. So I think we had about 35 parishioners who were involved in making those calls. Each person got 4 or 5 to call, and that was great. So we thank everybody who contributed in that way to the effort. And just a reminder that given the search process, this was a particularly important year for stewardship, because using the theme of "we build this church together," it has guided us. But we felt the importance of having a strong financial foundation to help with the new rector. So that's both so that Louise and her committee, when they were looking for candidates, that candidates were sort of inspecting our parishes, whether they wanted to come here, that they would see that we are all behind the parish and we're all continuing to contribute during this complicated year. And thus that would contribute to attracting the best candidates. And then also, once the new rector does come, we want that new rector to be off and running with a strong financial support. So that is important. So we have gotten to about, so far, 96% of our way to our goal, which is amazing. We didn't know what to expect this year, given everything, but we are really thrilled. And part of that is due to the fact that a couple of months ago, we announced a special challenge gift from a particularly generous parishioner, who the gift was that would double the money on any new pledges. So in other words, people who hadn't pledged in 2020, and then any people who increased their pledges from 2020 to 2021. And so far, I think we have about 65,000 that has come in that's been matched. So in other words, that's new pledges and increased pledges from last year. So that was a really, really great boost to our efforts in this complicated year. So, and I just note that we have, I think, about 20 new, we call them pledging units, which sounds sort of odd, but either a family or an individual is a pledging unit. So we have about 20 new pledging units, because we always have to keep looking for new folks who are getting involved in the church in different ways, but may not have made the step into actually pledging. So we're pleased with that. And it also offsets, because we, of course, lose some parishioners each year for different reasons. So we need to always be on the lookout. So I just hope everybody, all of you, will be, as you're on committees, as you're interacting with newer members of the parish, that you bring up the pledging issue with them, because that's how we keep the lifeblood going. So now this is something we joked about on Stewardship Committee. So we're now at this 594,000, and And obviously more coming in, but that leaves about 6,000 until we get to a nice even round number of 600,000 in pledges. So back from my years working for Christie's in New York, taking auctions and doing many charity auctions, I normally at this moment in a charity auction would say, okay, we've got to all I'm going to see who's going to give that extra $6,000 right now. We're not going to do that to you right now, but usually I would say to the audience, whatever the ballroom was, I would say, we've locked the doors. We're not letting you out until you do this. But so we can't do that virtually. But I have increased, I am increasing my pledge somewhat. And so I hope that some of you who have the financial resources might jump in and just do a little bit extra so that we can get that extra 6,000 and meet the 600,000. So, but I leave that up to you. So almost done. So planned giving. This, while we're taking a slight pause in the stewardship process because the spring is less busy. So this winter and spring, we're going to be focusing our efforts on sort of re-energizing the planned giving program. So as some of you may know, we've had a planned giving program going for a number of years, and we have certainly benefited from the generosity of parishioners through their wills to support the efforts of St. Paul's. And so, but that's gone slightly dormant. And so therefore we are now going to be re-energizing that. So I won't go into too much more detail on that, but you'll be hearing more about it. So we're going to give opportunities for people to learn more about ways that you can leave the church in your will that also work for your own financial needs in the meantime, etc. So watch for that. And then also, campus building enhancements. As Mark talked about, there have been some new discoveries as they've opened up the walls of our wonderful group of buildings. So some of the costs have gone up, or they're new costs that have been added to the capital budget. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that over the course of the next year, what those new costs are, and to seeing whether there might be any parishioners who'd be interested in stepping up. I mean, it's a great naming opportunity if anybody wants to honor somebody or the memory of. So we're going to be providing information about some of those and how you all might be able to help should you be interested. So, I mean, in conclusion, this has been a wonderful, challenging year in stewardship, a great collaborative process. Our stewardship meetings, I will just say personally, have been a wonderful highlight of my week as we all get together in this crazy time on Zoom and we laugh and we certainly disagree. But together and with Rick Felton's help, we figure things out and figure out what the next thing is to do. And we're going to keep going, keep the energy up through 2021. So I thank, and I should have put a list. I saw that list of Mark's committee, and I'm sorry, but you know who you are, Stewardship Committee. So I thank my my energetic and wise members of the Stewardship Committee for all their good cheer and time through this bizarre year. So I think that's it for me, unless there are any questions. I'm looking down at the chat function. Anything? This is Louise.
I think it would be nice to pay a special tribute to Janice Fiore for all the work that she has done as a member of the Stewardship Committee and your right hand.
Yes, Janice has, oh, there we go. Well, Janice has been my kind of the head of the Stewardship Committee has to be on the vestry. And but poor Janice has been an amazing addition to the team. And she kept us organized at times when we're all going in 100 directions. So we love Janice and we so much appreciate what she's done.
George, you have our thanks as well. It was an amazing initiative to undertake this year, and you did a great job. The whole committee did a great job. Any other questions for George? All right, we thank you. All right, so just a little bit of a few examples of work that's kind of going on to underpin all of these things that we're sharing with you today. So I'm going to ask Steve Camplandis, our accounting warden, to talk a little bit about some of what's going on there, and then also ask Dan to talk about our Safe Church expectations.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. The good news is that the pandemic has not really dramatically changed our financial situation. We have ended 2020 with a $44,000 surplus. That's a preliminary number, but it looks like we did end the year with a surplus, which is quite a big turnaround from 2019, when we in fact had a deficit. So that's very positive. As far as the 2021 budget, the Vestry has not yet passed a 2021 budget, but we're close. We're getting close to doing that. We are likely to be able to balance the budget this year with and restore some of the cuts that were made last year, and and get to a better place. As far as policies and procedures, we've been doing a lot of work in terms of putting into writing the church's financial policies and how we actually come up with a budget, how we actually make decisions around things like the spending of the endowment and various matters like that. So I think that will help a lot going forward in terms of clarifying decision-making processes. There's been a lot. I would say last year the big theme that has been coming up constantly in our discussions has been sustainability. We've really tried to grapple with this issue of how does the church preserve its programming and staffing complement in the face of long-term trends, which are challenging. We have fewer parishioners than we had in the 1950s and the 1990s even. And we're increasingly reliant on a small number of very generous donors. And the result of that is that we really have to think a lot about how to sustain what we do financially. And so we have to be very careful about, going forward in the next couple of years. I think there's an opportunity to make some decisions, or at least focus on that continually. And to my mind, that means really thinking about the endowment and the role that the endowment plays. How can we increase the endowment? Can we create new endowments, new sources of money that could support property maintenance on an ongoing basis? New sources of money that could potentially endow certain aspects of our programming, whether it be music or children and youth. It would be a tremendous help to us if we had more parts of the budget that were in effect funded already because of endowments, or money that is essentially available to support particular programs over time, over the long term. And then I just want to say, I want to really thank George for his work on stewardship, because that is critical to our ability to sustain what we're doing, and not just annual giving, but planned giving, and thinking about fundraising for sustainability. So I think we've come a long way in the last year, and the next rector, I think will inherit a more stable place than we were a year ago, but there's still work to do. So that's where we are.
Questions for Steve? Thank you, Steve, for all you've done in this past year as well. Any questions for our accounting warden?
This is Team McShane again. Does the surplus take into account the extant 2020 pledges, Steve, or are we is that surplus contingent on those coming in?
No, that's what happened through December 31st. So, we had a surplus even with, not 100%, but I will say for the most part, or historically, people do a good job of paying their pledges. It's not 100%, but it's fairly close. But we were able to achieve a surplus even, just based on the cash that came in.
In other words, we paid our bills for 2020.
That's
That's
right. We lived within our means for 2020.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
So if we get more 2020 money in now, that increases the surplus. Is that right?
Well, that's an accounting question. We are, we do sometimes, we have talked about moving to an accrual basis. So yes, that may be true, Clark, but just on a cash basis, and just in terms of cash, which is normally the way we think of it, we did have a $44,000 surplus.
Thank you.
Steve, that also reflects the PPP loan from 2020 as well. Am I correct?
No, it does not.
Okay.
That is not, we're not including that in the 2020 revenues.
Great.
Or anything else in the chat, folks, that it could help me with?
Nope.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Steve. Stay tuned for this year. Dan, would you bring us up to speed a little bit on what Safe Church is about and why that's relevant right now?
Thank you so much, Ruth. So one of my goals as the assistant rector has been to continue to develop a consciousness around safety, particularly for our children, youth, and families. And that's not to say that we weren't a safe place before, but it's something that we can always continue growing in. And part of the interim period is doing some housekeeping around best practices, which is why this is in this portion of the slide. And so on reviewing our files, we noticed that our Safe Church compliance was a little bit out of date. So that's why you bring in an interim team to help with some of that stuff. And so what is Safe Church? Safe Church is a training course that the diocese, in light of the abuse scandals that plagued the Roman Catholic Church at the beginning of the millennium, decided to make mandatory, and they received that mandate from the national church too. So the Safe Church curriculum is the same in every diocese. It's a virtual training, and there's so many courses in it that basically anyone who volunteers, whether they volunteer specifically with children or not, everyone basically needs to have it done. And that's because we all come in contact with children. And so it's been mandated by the national church, by the diocese, and it has to be renewed every couple of years. So I think when it was first implemented, a bunch of people did it, and then that time had lapsed. So now we're kind of in the second cycle of it. And we're trying to catch up and get people who maybe missed it the first time that should have gotten the training done, trained. So in the last year, we were able to get all of our church school teachers and key youth volunteers to receive the training. And any new teachers or youth volunteers will be trained in the future as a part of that. The next thing that we've been working on is getting the vestry trained. And so I think as of today, everyone on the vestry, there's one member who has 5 courses left. But besides those 5 courses, everyone has completed the training. So that's a big accomplishment. And the next step will be, people who are part of, working in worship, singing. And so we'll keep going down the line, the circle's gradually expanding. But we've also worked on keeping a better record. So that way, internally within the church, we know when someone's training has lapsed and can contact them and say, hey, you need to redo the training. And that's been a part of our internal processes as staff. So I think that sums it up. Anyone have any other questions around Safe Church?
None on the chat.
And I would just add that with so much going on online in terms of how we're interacting, it's really important that that be in the front of everyone's mind, that it's not only certainly to prevent any kind of inappropriate interaction here, but it's also to recognize some signs in children that they may be experiencing something like that. And I think for all of us to be aware when we're only interacting online, to know kind of what to look for and to be cognizant of that. We're not seeing them in person. And so we only have those online interactions. So really important for us all to have that awareness.
Yes, and I would add to that, now is a really good time for the church to be doing it. One, because we can get everyone caught up right now. And then the second reason is, I think before some people, just because the training was all online, there was a lot of people said, I'm not technically savvy or whatever, and that was a struggle. Well, that, I never wish COVID had happened, but one of, I guess, the things that has emerged in light of it is we're all tech savvy now, so we all can get it done. The other thing that's really important too is there's an elder abuse portion of the curriculum as well, so you can identify signs for that, and that's important because we have a lot of older parishioners. And I think it's just a proactive step we can take, as Ruth has said, to just raise a conscious awareness of kind of signs that are there. And you would think this would never happen in a church. God forbid it would. But in light of the fact that it could happen, we just want to be proactive to see if this can help be a deterrent towards those sorts of things happening, and also to help give us a greater consciousness in general around safety. I think that's one thing from COVID as well. We are way more highly conscious of what safety is. That's kind of the key thing right now, I guess, across the board. So thank you, Ruth, for giving me an opportunity to share about that.
Dan and Ruth, it's Madeline. I do want to just ask another question about this. When we started Room at the Inn, those of us that were going to be involved with that family had to get background checks and do something related to the state as well, in terms of doing their acknowledgement of reporting child abuse and that sort of thing. Is that covered in Safe Church, or is that a separate issue?
That's a great question. It's not covered by Safe Church. So we have a mandate from the diocese and the church, but then there's also certain government things we need to get done. As with any kind of internal systems, it doesn't all happen at once. So we're moving towards that being a part of it as well. Right now, the focus is on just getting everyone Safe Church trained, and then that will be kind of the next step in the rollout of the plan. But that's a great question.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
good you did that.
Yeah. And the Children, Youth, and Family Resource Ministry is a great kind of hub, so that I think that ongoing, you have a vehicle by which all of this can happen. So it's less likely to fall by the wayside. So thank you, Dan, for that. Any other questions for Dan? Great, thank you. All right, Louise, what can you tell us, if anything?
Well, I can tell you some things. I can't tell you all the things you'd like to know about. And I'm sorry I didn't give Ruth something to put up on the board. You know something if you have been following my reports and happenings and stuff on the website. So I'm going to give you a summary and an update briefly. The search committee is working very steadily. You may remember we meet by Zoom every Tuesday evening at 7. There has been a good deal of interest in our rector job, including from a number of really good-looking candidates. We get extensive portfolios from them, not just a sort of an outline resume. They have a pretty wide variety of backgrounds, both in ministry and other things as well. We spent several weeks setting up our processes because, first of all, we wanted to really study the parish profile so we could remember what St. Paul said we wanted in a new rector through the survey and then the profile. We used our study of the profile to create a list of skills to compare our candidates to, and to create questions for all the candidates based on those skills. So we compare every single candidate, no matter how different they may be, we compare them all to the same priorities of skills that St. Paul's said we wanted. Then also looking at the parish profile, we tried to anticipate the questions that candidates may ask us about St. Paul's. And one of the great things that's come out of that is because our committee members are actively involved in the full variety of St. Paul's ministries, we're able to give accurate, in-depth answers to questions that were asked. So the interviewing, while we are continuing to get portfolios from interested candidates, which we will do through March 1st, the interviewing process has begun. And we'll be interviewing and gradually narrowing down the candidate list as a result over the next couple of months. We're moving ahead as fast as possible while still keeping to the spirit of thoughtful discernment, which is really, really important because just as sort of a general example, somebody looks mildly interesting on paper, but then when you start to talk to them, they're really engaging, or maybe they're just not quite who we're looking for. So the interviews are very, very important. And there will, for those we're very interested in, there will be a second set of interviews. At some point, we may need to start meeting twice a week so that we have a better chance of calling one of the candidates on our short list so that they aren't called by some other church that's also interviewing them. So I ask you all to keep praying for us in our process, our discernment, and we will keep working hard for St. Paul's. I will answer any questions I can, but I'll tell you why I can't tell you about the specifics of the search. That is because many of the candidates have not told their current parishes that they are looking to leave. And there are, candidates and the possibility of other candidates whom some of you might know, somebody from another diocese or somebody from this diocese. And if you knew from us that a particular person had submitted their materials to us and you happened to mention it to a friend from that diocese, then it would get out and that candidate would become kind of a lame duck in their parish. And that would really be very, very unfortunate for them and us for that matter. So we don't reveal any names or even specific numbers, but be assured there are some really good candidates who are interested in us because St. Paul's is a very interesting parish. We've been told that. Any questions? Thank you.
Louise, thank you. And thank your committee. It's a very hardworking group, very hardworking group. So we know you're gonna bring it home.
Thanks.
So I certainly welcome your questions at this time. We've been trying to take them as we go. I want to thank, we have tremendous lay leadership in this church. And, I'm so thankful for that. Just amazing. The energy is amazing. And if you feel moved to bring some new energy to things, please reach out to us. We want an influx of new ideas and new energy and so on. So any ideas or if you're feeling called to participate in any of this work, this is not Vestry only, as you could see. This is an all hands on deck kind of a thing. So please don't hesitate to do that. The doors are open and we want you to be part of things. Questions for anyone that you've heard from today or just general questions that you might have? Like that last, 2 minutes before the bell rings in class, nobody wants to raise their hand and ask the question.
So. I'll raise my hand. This is Pam Bracey.
Hi, Pam.
Even though we are in COVID, will there be personal visits either direction, either to the candidates or to us? Or are we simply going to be looking at paperwork as opposed to up-close persons? Thank you.
The people on the final list, which may be 2, 3, 4 people, we should be able, we've talked to search committees from several other churches in the diocese. And even during COVID, they were able to invite people, candidates, on the short list to come to the parish given them tours, had conversations with the committee, and driven around the neighborhood and the area. One committee chair at another church said that what they did was the candidate was in one car, his or her own car with their spouse, and the committee member would be in their own car, so that people were not in each other's cars during pandemic. And, they would follow behind the committee member and talk on the, somebody else in the car would talk on the phone as they were going around. But the interviews will all be on Zoom. And in the old days, we used to travel to candidates' own, current churches to go through a service and a sermon. Now, everybody has things online. Partly they did before the pandemic, and now because everybody does it in pandemic mode. So we've actually already started listening to candidate sermons online. So that's really the answer to your question. There will be a little bit of in-person.
Thank you. Thank you, Louise.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Any other questions? Feel free to jump in or use the chat if you're feeling shy.
Well, the most recent message on the chat is from a member of the vestry, and it says, "Thanks to you, Ruth, for your leadership."
Oh, thank
and
you.
all of us that work with you on the vestry would say amen to that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Now I'm all flustered. Right. If there are no other questions right now, I think we'll close. Again, this will be posted on the website. This is a live link in the presentation where you can contact any member of the vestry. It'll take you right to the website, to that particular page. Reach out to any of us with any of the things you think of perhaps after this presentation. And I want to thank you all for taking the time this morning to listen and to pose your questions and offer your thoughts. So Dan, would you kindly give us a prayer to send us on our way?
I'm going to post it in the chat, but ask that everyone's muted, even though we're going to say it so that the sound doesn't come across weird. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty Father, whose blessed Son before his passion prayed for his disciples that they might be one, as you and he are one. Grant that your church, being bound together in love and obedience to you, may be united in one body by the one Spirit, that the world may believe in him whom you have sent, your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe week. Take care.